Sonic remasters have been rather inconsistent in the past few years. We had Sonic Colors Ultimate, which, well, let's just say the colors were definitely ultimate, enough to send you to the hospital. Then we had Sonic Origins, which seemed pretty hard to mess up, but at the end of the day it was a very lackluster collection, with much to be desired. However, all that changed when in January of this year, we got the reveal trailer for a game called Sonic X Shadow Generations. Weird naming choice aside, it was an exciting announcement. Nothing too crazy though, or so we thought. From the trailer, it really looked like another Sonic Forces episode Shadow, an underwhelming prologue campaign with only 3 levels. One of the things made clear by this trailer is that the Sonic Generations remaster part of this package was almost entirely untouched from the original graphically. While this is a shame, I'd rather it look the same than look worse, like a lot of other Sonic remasters. Where they went wrong with that was marketing it as having upgraded visuals, which is obviously false advertising. I made an entire video a while back on why this is a problem if you're interested. One of the things that really surprised everyone was the return of Black Doom. We haven't seen Black Doom since 2005. The fact that he was coming back meant a lot of old lore was going to be reintroduced. This was our first sign that we were in for something special. As the year went by, we got even more news, and before we knew it, the hype for this game was insane. It didn't have as many eyes on it as Frontiers did, but the people that were paying attention to it were all very optimistic and satisfied. Something Frontiers wishes it had with its marketing. The hype and speculation continued until the game's October 25th release date. So, is it any good? Does it hold up to the expectations that we had? Let's find out. Sonic X Shadow Generations is a 2-for-1 package. You get a remaster of Sonic Generations and a brand new campaign called Shadow Generations. Let's dive into Sonic's half first, since I have the least to say about it. Sonic Generations was one of my first Sonic games, and it's just as great as I remember. On the remaster side of things, not much has changed. Graphically, it still looks the same, which is a bit of a disappointment, but the graphics of this game were never a point of contention for me. The silky smooth 60 FPS feels great on PS5, and the haptics were handled really well. The drop dash seems like one of the more noteworthy additions to the remaster, but its implementation feels very tacked on. For classic Sonic, it works how you would expect, even if it's a little slow compared to the spin dash. But on modern Sonic, it's practically useless. You're going to be boosting 90% of the time, so there's not much need for the drop dash, especially when the boost is significantly faster. The way to activate it is very strange as well. You have to air dash first, which has you lose all your momentum. I really thought they handled this better considering the new control scheme. The boost is on R2 this time, to be more in line with Frontiers, which feels great. And the homing attack is now on square, which is how I always preferred it. But it's actually not. So what they did was they just mapped the jump button to both X and square, which is a very strange choice. Sometimes the input just won't register and I'll have to go back to pressing X twice. The gen's muscle memory also doesn't help this change. There is an option to change it back to the original scheme, but that isn't something I care for. I'm glad it's an option though for those who want it. The dialogue for this remaster has also been completely rewritten. The story of Generations was never special, as it was just an anniversary game, but this time SEGA has gotten Ian Flynn to completely change all the dialogue in the game. And I can confidently say, this change is absolutely horrendous. This was such an unnecessary change, and it doesn't even make the story any better. Of course, you get that classic Ian Flynn thing of throwing random references around, and they just feel so forced. Ian Flynn isn't my favorite Sonic writer. In fact, I very much dislike the way he writes most characters, especially Amy. But he wrote Shadow Generations very well. I just don't know why he fumbled the bag so much with this remaster. But that's really all I have to say about this version of Generations. Some of these changes leave a lot to be desired, but in terms of gameplay, it's still the same Sonic Generations we know and love. But this package doesn't just end here, as Sonic X Shadow Generations is a double deal. Shadow Generations opens with one of the best first stages in Sonic history, Space Colony Arc Act 1. This level alone shows how much the team has learned from Frontiers. There's a ton of branching paths that let you play the level in completely different ways, as well as just good level design. There's no random straight lines where the game plays itself. Instead, you have real platforming challenges. One of the mechanics this game introduces is Chaos Control, which lets you stop time. This has a ton of effects in the stage, like moving platform stopping. Timing it right gives you an advantage, and timing it wrong will result in getting to a lower path of the stage. The game actually requires you to think, unlike another game. But then right as you think it's about to end, the level completely changes into Radical Highway from Sonic Adventure 2, or as the game calls it, the Doom Zone. It's insane that something this crazy is in a new Sonic game. It's something I really hope we see return in future entries. The next zone is Rail Canyon from Sonic Heroes. I was really surprised to see that a Heroes level would be in this game. The game looks phenomenal with the lighting of this stage, and the color palette is really satisfying to look at. This stage introduces enemies that you have to Chaos Spear first before you can attack, which creates a lot of reaction-based challenges in the levels that I really love. The only complaint I have is that sometimes it can be hard to tell some objects and enemies apart from the background, but other than that, this level is amazing. The third zone is Kingdom Valley. This has to be my favorite level in the game. It's so open and there's a ton of different ways to go about the stage, as well as a ton of opportunities to use the Doom Surf ability. I've replayed this level a ton, and it's going to be a while before I get sick of it. It also is the first to utilize the Doom Blast ability, which is by far my favorite in the game. It's so fun to just send enemies flying and then teleport behind them. It creates a ton of opportunities to open up new pathways and just feels amazing to pull off. I just wish there were more opportunities to use it. Not only does this level look fantastic graphically, but seeing Sonic 06 representation in 2024 is also a big deal for me, since regardless of its infamously bad nature, it's a game I have a lot of love and respect for. Next up we have Sunset Heights. I was really excited to see how they'd handle this one, since, of course, the original version of this level was playing itself for half the time. And it's safe to say they absolutely killed it. What a huge step up. There's a lot more to this level than Forces would lead you to believe. You have the outside city, underground sections, and even the sewers. Plus, you get another one of those Doom Zone sections here. All that makes for a ton of visual variety that helps this recognizable level to feel very fresh. The next zone is one I really didn't expect to be here. Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers. I was very curious to see how they'd translate an open world-esque area into an action stage, but once again, they killed it. This place in general just looks so much better than in Frontiers. Most of the platforms are actually integrated within the environment this time, instead of just placing random ones. The black ones are still here, but they're put in places where it makes sense. The section where you're platforming over the lava makes really good use of the environmental platforms. The lighting in this area is just really nice as well. Chaos Island introduces you to the Doom Morph ability, which definitely took some time to get used to. It can be a little finicky to control in the beginning, but once you get into the swing of things, it feels just fine. It's not my favorite, but it's still fun nonetheless. After that, we have the final zone, Radical Highway. This is a bit of a strange pick. We've seen this zone used in the game numerous times in the middle of levels, and now it gets its own zone dedicated to it. This means we have no level from Shadow the Hedgehog. It's just really weird to me that you're making a game about Shadow but there's no level from his own game. I think Black Comet would have been a really nice choice, but for what it is, I'm fine with it. The level design here is fantastic. It takes advantage of the Doom Wings, which is a really fun ability. It basically acts as this game's super form, draining rings and allowing you to fly. I really like going back to older levels and seeing what new pathways I can create with the wings. It's really fun, but it's also kind of overpowered. While most people see that as an issue, I think as long as it's fun it doesn't really matter. There's always an option to turn it off anyway. So with that we've covered all the main zones, but that isn't all this game has to offer. Connecting each level is a Sonic Frontiers style open zone called the White Space. It has much more personality than the White Space from the original generations. Shadow controls very nicely in both the stages and the hub. I'm not dying from whiplash from having two completely different sets of physics like in Frontiers. It's very cohesive this time around, and that's for the better. There's a lot to do in the hub, like collecting concept art and music tracks that can be played in the stages, as well as NPCs that you can talk to. These work really well to flesh out their respective characters and add some life to the white space. There's also these little challenge levels which aren't anything too special, but they add some nice replay value to the game. This game also has a collection room, which looks very nice. It lets you see Shadow's history in each game he was prevalent in, which I'm sure newer fans will appreciate. But for us older fans, there's never before seen concept art, as well as Professor Gerald's diary, which uncovers a ton of lore and kinda talks about what life was like on the Ark. All of these collectibles are a lot of fun to hunt for in the stages, my favorite being the music tracks. A ton of iconic music from the series is here, as well as iconic ones from Shadow's history, my favorite being the original version of All Hail Shadow by Magnify. I've always preferred that version over the Crush 40 version, and I'm really surprised and glad to see that it's here. I have a similar feeling with songs like The Chosen One and Never Turn Back. These songs haven't been represented in a very long time, and seeing them back is a huge win. This is a perfect time to talk about this game's soundtrack. It's mostly great, as Sonic soundtracks usually are. I love the Collection Rooms theme, as well as the Sunset Heights remix, and the redone instrumentation of What I'm Made Of. Some more standout tracks are the remix of All Hail Shadow for the final boss, as well as the title themes for each game in this collection, being remixes of It Doesn't Matter from SA1 and Throw It All Away from SA2. While controversial, I do really like the remix of Chaos Island. I absolutely hated it when I first heard it, but it's really grown on me. The original track has a much more atmospheric vibe, so turning such a serene and beautiful piece into a lively EDM track definitely wasn't something that would win everybody over. But I think the Chaos Island remixes are okay at worst and pretty good at best. I especially like Act 2's remix, which takes its melody from the island's 6th movement. Chaos Island is one of my favorite levels in this game visually, but all of them genuinely look fantastic. This looks much more like a next-gen game than Frontiers. The graphics are genuinely stunning. With all the added detail to the activity cards and haptics on PS5, it really feels like this game was made for PlayStation. The animations in this game are breathtaking as well. The first cutscene blew my mind with how much better it looked than Frontiers. They're actually animating the eyebrows this time instead of just the eyelids. Speaking of cutscenes, the story in this game is a beautiful one. I'm not going to talk about it much since I think you should experience it for yourself, but it's definitely a powerful and emotional one. And while they aren't super worth talking about, the bosses are pretty good. Mephiles is definitely my favorite. Overall, this package is absolutely worth its $50 price tag. You're getting a game that's already great, and then an even better game on top of it that has a ton of things to do even after you complete it. If you're a fan of the series or someone wanting to get into Shadow's character, I definitely recommend picking this up. It's recently become one of, if not my favorite game in the series, and I'm incredibly grateful that Sonic Team was given the time and budget they needed to make something spectacular. It's just a great game, no strings attached. That's all from me. Take care and have a super blessed day.